So, later on this month, the 20th of September to be exact, OutRun by Sega, one of my favourite games of all time, turns 30. So to help celebrate this, I thought I'd do a little compilation video celebrating all things OutRun-y. But anyway, enough talk from me, let's coin up and play a game. No, wait a second, that doesn't seem right. Here we go. This is more like it. Let's get some credits in this bad boy and start playing some OutRun.
Get ready.
So this is of course the arcade version of OutRun, being played via the wonders of emulation using MAME. Now the idea with this video is to have a look back at all things OutRun related over its 30-year history, and I'm going to try and cover every home port of OutRun that's come out in the past. So some of this will be footage that I've recorded myself, some of it will be archive footage that I've obtained from YouTube. So for those video clips I'm going to put the name of the uploader and the name of the video on screen. I'm also going to make those sections of the video into links so that if you just click anywhere on the screen during one of those segments it will take you to the original uploader's video. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I said I'm going to try and feature every single version of OutRun, but inevitably there will be some home version that I've missed out somewhere, some dodgy bootleg one or something like that. So if you notice any glaring omissions in my selection of games here, then please feel free to let me know in the comments below. So as well as the home versions of OutRun, I'm also going to have a look at the game's legacy. We'll take a look at the game's sequels and pseudo-sequels. So let's crack on with the home versions of OutRun, having a look first of all at the console versions and then the home computer versions. Now, I believe the conversion duties of the Mega Drive version weren't actually handled by Sega themselves, and I think it shows. There's just something about this version that just has always looked a bit off to me. Plus, I don't like the fact as well that there isn't actually any engine sound in this version. Now, the PC Engine version, however, here, I think looks much more faithful to the arcade, but it's just a shame that the engine sound in this just sounds terrible. It sounds like a fly that's engaged in a prolonged fart right next to your ear. Now it's quite surprising here to see that the Game Gear version of OutRun is actually a completely redesigned game from the Sega Master System version. So back in the good old days, I used to own OutRun on the Sega Master System, and I also had the ZX Spectrum version as well. But nowadays the only version I still own is the Sega Saturn version on the PAL version of Sega Ages here. Now the PAL version of OutRun is slightly stripped back compared to the Japanese version, and I believe that's because of the fact they needed to make extra space on there because of the fact the disc also included Afterburner and Space Harrier, unlike the Japanese Saturn version, which was a standalone title. So I believe the Japanese version has got an additional 60 frames per second mode, which my version hasn't, as well as a few additional extra arranged bits of music as well. Now, for my money, this is definitely the best home version of Outrun. It looks, as far as I can see, completely indistinguishable from the arcade version. Despite the fact I've only ever played this with a digital pad and not an analog controller for the Saturn, this still feels incredibly close to the arcade version to me. Now, despite being a technologically superior machine, the Dreamcast version of Outrun is actually less faithful to the arcade original than the Saturn. So what you'll notice here is that your player controllable car has had a few little cosmetic changes to make it less recognisable than the actual original Ferrari Testarossa that it was based on. And I believe that this is down to licensing issues, in that Sega never actually had the license to use the likeness of a Ferrari Testarossa in the first place. There was even a version of the original Outrun hidden inside the Xbox version of Outrun 2, and as Sega now had the Ferrari license, they were able to go back to the original arcade sprite for the Testarossa. There was even a version of Outrun for the Game Boy Advance, which came packaged with Afterburner, Space Harrier and Super Hang-On as a complete package called Sega Arcade Gallery. And most recently, Outrun has made its way over to the Nintendo 3DS. It even has special 3D options that make it look like you're playing one of the giant deluxe hydraulic cabinets back from the 1980s.
Checkpoint!
Now, before we move on to the home computer versions, let's have a quick look at all these home console versions side by side. Pardon my ears. Anyway, let's finish off this look at the home computer versions with a look at all of them side by side. And here are the home computer versions side by side with the console and arcade versions. Outrun 3D was a pseudo-sequel for the Sega Master System. I'm classing it as a pseudo-sequel because it's pretty much a remake of the original Outrun, but with some slightly different music, and also the ability to use the Sega Master System's 3D glasses. Ooh! Battle Outrun is another Sega Master System only game. It's a bit of a clone of Chase HQ, and if I'm completely honest, I think it's pretty shit really. The game moves at a fairly good speed, and it's not bad looking for a Sega Master System game. To me though, it's let down by the fact that the gameplay can get quite frustrating because of the way the CPU cars seem to zigzag across the screen, so no matter what you do to try and get out their way, they seem to always hit you. Outrun 2019 is a Mega Drive only game. It's a bit of an oddity as it wasn't originally designed as an Outrun game. It started off life as a generic futuristic racer created by the developer Sims, and then somewhere down the line someone thought it would be a good idea to slap the Outrun brand on it. It's not a bad game I guess, but personally it just doesn't really do anything for me. Outrun Europa was a game which only came out on the home computers, Sega Game Gear and Sega Master System. It was developed by Probe Software and published by US Gold with no involvement from Sega. US Gold still had the rights to Outrun at the time, having got them from Sega to produce the home computer versions, and were trying to basically make a spin-off to get a little bit more money out of this particular franchise. Turbo Outrun was the first Outrun sequel to appear in the arcades. Now I believe it was running on slightly more powerful hardware, so it improved the graphics slightly of the original. It also added in a turbo system, also added a chase element as well where you had to evade the police, and also introduced rivals that you were racing against. You can see my one on the right there. It also gave you the ability to upgrade your car when you reached checkpoints. However, Turbo Outrun did away with the ability to choose which stage you wanted to go to at the end of each level like the original Outrun. Sega's next arcade sequel for Outrun came in the form of Outrunners in 1992. This was the same year that Virtua Racing came out in the arcade, and Outrunners does represent the last of Sega's sprite-scaling 3D games. One of the big differences between Outrunners and previous versions of Outrun was the fact that you could now play it in multiplayer. The standard machine came as two separate cabs, and these can be linked together to form a whopping 8-player multiplayer. Okay, 8-player multiplayer probably doesn't sound that impressive nowadays, but back then that was pretty big stuff. Today, via the wonders of modern emulation, you can actually get to enjoy all this multiplayer fun yourself at home. So this is me engaging in a 2-player game with one of my friends, and in the section of the video prior to this, I showed how it's possible to actually get the game running in the 8-player mode by linking 4 different versions of MAME. Outrunners was also ported over to the Sega Mega Drive. Now what's interesting about this version is that in the Japanese version there's a code that you can put in which lets you select the car from Virtua Racing as a secret playable vehicle. Unlocking this car also unlocks some of the music from Virtua Racing as well. Then, just because we can, let's have a look at the Mega Drive version side by side with the arcade version of Outrunners. In 2006, the PlayStation 2 got a remake of the original Outrun in 3D form as part of the Sega Ages 2500 collection. These 3D ports of Sega games were infamous for their poor quality, and unfortunately the Sega Ages version of Outrun was no exception. The graphics here are pretty shocking really in terms of how low quality they are. Having said that though, there is a strange charm to this game that does keep me coming back to it. It also has additional arranged music, and also boasts an arranged mode as well with slightly different courses. Before this though, in 2003, something incredible had happened in the arcades.
Get ready.
Running on Sega's Chihiro arcade hardware, the original Outrun finally got its first numbered sequel, Outrun 2. In 2004, Outrun 2 got ported over to the Xbox as an arcade exclusive, and this is the version that you can see me playing at the moment. Now in the video here I'm actually running this on an Xbox 360, which additionally upscales the game into HD and makes it look even better. As well as fancy new 3D graphics, the game also introduced a new drifting mechanism, which makes power sliding around a corner at 180 miles an hour an absolute breeze, or a passing breeze if you will. Sorry, that was an absolutely terrible pun. As well as including all 15 of the original arcade game stages, the Xbox 2 port also had a couple of surprising bonuses, which came in the form of some tracks from their previously unconverted arcade games Scud Race and Daytona USA 2. Here we can see the Scud Race track in action. It's one long course made up of all 4 stages from the Scud Race arcade game. And here's the Daytona USA version. Again, one long course made up of all 3 stages from the Daytona USA 2 arcade game, in the same way that the challenge course worked in that game. The game also supported system link play, with up to 6 players being able to compete simultaneously. Here you can see me demonstrating a 2-player system link on the Japanese version of the game, which boasts some cosmetic improvements to the bonus stages of this game to make them more accurate to the Scud Race and Daytona USA 2 levels that they were originally based on. In 2004, Sega released an upgrade to the Outrun 2 arcade game titled Outrun 2 SP, and these courses eventually made it over to the home systems in 2006 as part of a combined package with the original 15 Outrun 2 courses called Outrun 2006 Coast to Coast. Unlike the original Outrun 2, which was an Xbox exclusive, Outrun Coast to Coast had ports on the original Xbox, PlayStation 2, PlayStation Portable, and there was also a version for PC as well. Now this is the original Xbox version that you can see running here, once again being upscaled on an Xbox 360. Similarly to Outrun 2, Outrun 2006 also offers the ability to play in multiplayer. Here you can see 2 PCs operating in a wireless LAN. The network is a little bit temperamental though, it's not quite as good as the system link on the Xbox, as you can see here by one of the cars pinballing around all over the place there. Of the different versions of the game, the PC is arguably the best looking with its HD resolutions. However, having said that, the Xbox version, as in the original Xbox version, does look very good when you upscale it into HD using the Xbox 360. For some strange reason though, the PC version is lacking the bloom effects which are in the Xbox version. And these are the effects which give everything a sort of nice pleasant glow when you're sort of going through sunsets and things like that. The PC version is also lacking any rumble functions and joypads and lacking any force feedback effects, but there was however a hack by a gentleman named Howard Casto from the BYOAC forums who has put these force feedback effects back into the game, and I can confirm that they do work and they work well. Something that's just worth noting as well is that the Japanese PlayStation 2 version of the game was different again to the Western versions. It had its name changed back to Outrun 2 SP. It also had additional force feedback effects added in, and it also had some missing animations re-added back into the game when you get to the course goals. Here's an example of one of them on the Milky Way stage.
Congratulations!
Outrun Online Arcade was essentially a stripped-down version of Outrun Coast to Coast that came out on the PS3 and Xbox 360. It was available as a digital download and contained only the tracks from Outrun 2 SP. This is the PlayStation 3 version that you can see me playing here. Although it was a stripped-down version of Outrun Coast to Coast, one thing it did have going in its favour was the fact that it added the force feedback effects back in if you're using the steering wheel. On both Xbox 360 and PS3, this is definitely the best looking version of the modern Outrun games to date, being both in HD and, as you can see here, having all those missing bloom effects added back in. It looks absolutely beautiful. So regardless of whether you're playing Outrun 2, Outrun 2006 Coast to Coast or Outrun Online Arcade, I think you're guaranteed for a good time. I think it's fair to say that Outrun 2 is definitely one of my favourite games of all time. It's definitely right up there in my top 5, and I think it's more than a fitting successor to the Outrun legacy. Unfortunately though, with the exception of the 3DS remake of Outrun, this has been the last proper Outrun game to date. However, that hasn't stopped Outrun still having a bit of an influence on some other games. Yes, that's right, I am of course talking about the Outrun Bay stage from Sonic and All-Star Racing Transformed. Here we can see the PC version running. Now, one of the things I love about this game is not just the fact it's got an entire stage based around the first level from Outrun 2, but also the fact I get to play as the Hornet from Daytona USA on it. Something else that's worth just talking about as well is Cannonball, which is a complete rewrite of the original Outrun that came out a couple of years ago. Now, this is an unofficial project which I'll put a link to in the actual video description here. The benefits that you get with this include several enhancements, including a 60 frames per second mode, a widescreen mode, the ability to play the game in a first-person view, the ability to choose between the Western arrangement of the tracks or the Japanese, which differs slightly, and it also adds back in the force feedback effects from the original Outrun arcade game. It's great fun and really worth your while checking it out. Now, I've used an option in the game here to add scan lines in, and I've subsequently found out that this doesn't work very well on YouTube when it's processing its video sometimes. So if you see what looks like any graphical sort of glitching or anything going on here, it's from the YouTube video itself, not from the emulator. Oh, it's not actually an emulator, from the game. Now, coming right back round full circle to an original version of Outrun seems like a pretty good way of rounding things off here. If, like me, you're a huge fan of Outrun, then I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you're someone that wasn't that familiar with the game before, then I hope this video's inspired you to try some of the games out. It's a brilliant series and well worth your time. Right then everyone, so this concludes my 30 years of Outrun tribute video. If you've enjoyed it, then don't forget to like, share and subscribe. My name's Mr. Thundering, and hopefully catch you again soon. Take care, bye bye. You motherfucker!